Isn't this beautiful, by the way?
Yeah, it's quite
It's so awesome. It's so
The word we used earlier was ominous.
ominous.
It is
Yeah.
kind of looming over you right now.
It is actually looming, isn't it? I've only, we used to have it at Shepperton Studios, and I've only seen it in sections, so to see it all together beautifully lit is impressive.
What's your favourite part of the tour? I presume you've been round.
Actually, I have to confess I haven't been around yet, so I'm going to come on Saturday for the opening, and I'm going to have a good look around.
So far it's this bit then.
It's this bit, and I did have a quick sneak through one of the halls, which looked impressive. It's lovely, actually, lovely coming back. It's one, it's really impressive to see how diligently and beautifully it's all put together, and two, it's just lovely to see some of the props that we work with collected together.
You tell me if I've got my maths wrong, but you directed 4 out of 8.
Indeed.
Other bits of, not films obviously, but when you walk around now, and
Yes.
some of them maybe feel slightly more yours than others, if you know what I mean, because of that.
Yeah, I came onto the series when it was getting a little bit darker and a little bit more emotionally mature. So inevitably, what I wanted to do was to grow the series up a wee bit, because the cast were growing older, the characters were dealing with deeper, darker, more emotional issues. So my job ultimately was to, help the series grow up a little bit more. So my movies are perhaps a bit darker than the early ones. And what Chris Columbus did brilliantly in the first 2, he found that glorious cast, obviously, and he kind of made the world so accessible and enjoyable and delightful and shiny and magical. But as the books progressed, they got more complex, I think, and so that's what I was...
And that darkening, if there is such a term, does that reflect itself in production design, costumes, cinematography, music, everything?
It goes right across the board. It starts with the script. So, in a scene that would have been quite light and bright at one point, we're just getting a little deeper and a little bit more complicated and a little bit more emotional. So, across every craft. Stuart Craig once said, once David got here, we changed the colour of the walls, so it needed to reflect a slightly more intense world. But the great thing about the world is that it's got so much variety in it. What I loved about these books and these stories is that ultimately, you could do comedy, you could do drama, you could do action, at some points I felt like I was making a horror movie. For example, when Harry in Hallows Part 1 finds Bathilda Bagshot's house and she turns into a snake, it sort of felt like it felt like a horror movie to me, and then equally the moments of real comedy and drama and spectacle. So what was really appealing about doing these movies was the fact that you were at filmmaking gym. You were kind of making all sorts of different movies all in one movie, and I think that might explain the success. The audiences got a very rich experience when they went into the theatre. They were not just with characters that they obviously adored and they were growing up with, but they were, the movies were rarely one note. They had so much going on, and they would make you laugh and cry and gasp and all the rest of it.
So from book 4 and 5 onwards, basically, you were reading the books before the film, before planning for the film really started. So so when you first, obviously I think you came aboard for 5, when you first read book number 5, did you know that you were going to be directing at that point, and did you find anything daunting in the book as to how you're going to direct it, or anything you were particularly excited about directing?
I was really excited about directing the wizard fight between Voldemort and Dumbledore in 5. I thought that would be a really cool thing to do, and I storyboarded it for months, and just the fact that they're 2 of the most powerful wizards in the world, and you've never seen them fight before, and you've seen levels of magic that the children have been taught, but then you get these 2 supreme wizards, and I was really excited about making that feel visceral and violent and extraordinary and spectacular. So I really look forward to that part of the story, and actually the emotional part. It was my first opportunity to work with Dan Radcliffe, and I just wanted to. That first story is about him being very troubled and conflicted and angry all the time. So in the book, he gets really hysterical, and so we had to temper that slightly. But I was really excited about exploring him as a character and get, exploring how difficult he was finding school and how difficult it was him finding the relationships he was having with his mates and all of that. That was really fun to look forward to.
So obviously he was in The Woman in Black recently, where I think he has to play a similar character, kind of quite troubled. Have you seen the film? What did you think of Dan's?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard great things about it, and I am going to see it. I've unfortunately haven't had time to see it, but I will see it, and I hear it's really fun. Yeah, I look forward to
fun
it.
isn't. There's someone brought children into the cinema, very small children. I don't think.
Were they slightly traumatised by
One
how
of them
scary
ran
it
out
was?
crying.
Okay, all right.
But I suppose that's a testament to how powerful the
That's
film.
good. I mean, that's not good for the kids. That's terrible for the kids, but it obviously is working. That's just wonderful.
And you said you're possibly going to be directing a Doctor Who movie, but Stephen Moffat he wasn't so sure. I think he might have refuted that. So where does that stand? Are you still planning to direct?
Yeah, I'm definitely doing a Doctor Who movie. But I think where everyone got confused was that we're not making it for 5 years or 6 years. It's
right.
a very slow development. I've got projects backed up between now and about 2015, and it's something I'm very passionate and excited about. But Stephen's a genius. I love his work. I think he's incredibly clever. Love what he's done with Doctor Who. Love his Sherlock Holmes. He's such a gifted man. And but this is something that's a very, 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 very slow burn. And I'm hoping to sit down with him at some point and have a chat. But it's sort of it's just something we've been talking about for a little while. And
So will it be tied into the series, or will it be a separate entity?
that's all to be discussed.
Yeah.
Actually, that's all to be discussed. Because it's 5 years from now, 6 years from now. It's weird because what will the series be like in 5 or 6 years? So, but I'm very excited about it. Very excited about that world.
Can I ask about your future projects? Like you mentioned,
Yes.
Are you doing a film with Emma Watson? Is that
I am.
happening?
I'm planning a movie. I've got a book written by a lady called Emma Forrest called Your Voice in My Head, and I'd love Emma to be in that. She's very excited about being in that. And I've got a wonderful Western called Reliable Wife, and 2 or 3 other things I'm very excited about. But I'd love to work with all of the young actors again at some point, because I'm such a fan of just them as people and as actors. And this first project, Emma's kind of perfect for. It's actually a very complicated role as well. It's about a girl who self-harms and tries to kill herself. It's a million miles away from Potter, which is why it's probably quite fun to do. And it's about this girl who's trying to kill herself and a psychiatrist who's actually dying, who teaches her how to live. So it's a very emotional, powerful, intriguing book.
Are you and the other of the 2 of the many Davids on this project, are you still, whether together or separately, actively looking for a returnable, family-friendly franchise? Because in many ways that's the kind of gold standard, isn't it? I know people say, oh, this is going to be the new Harry Potter, but no one's got anywhere near really producing something which will appeal from anyone from 5 to 20.
It's always the case that you're looking for things, but I think that you've just nailed it. The minute you say this is the next whatever, you doom it. Do you know? And I think David said it very eloquently. Ultimately, you just want to make things that excite you, or intrigue you, or inspire you, and that's all you can do. And those things come along very rarely, ultimately. So. I think audiences like to commit to something that, gives them a wonderful time. And of course we're looking for things that, and we are making a couple of movies together. We're developing and planning things together. But again, they're a few years away. It takes ages to develop things. From the minute you commission the script, get a writer on board, you go through 10 drafts. It takes a while.
But when Potter came along, there wasn't, so to speak, a template. It invented its own template, really, as a really long-running, family-friendly franchise. But for the next 20 years, everyone's going to compare everything to Potter.
Of course. Yeah. Yep. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And everyone tries to find the next Potter or the next Twilight or the next Hunger Games, and of course it makes total sense to look for those ideas, but they're like lightning, they don't come along very often.
Did any of the actors at any point really struggle with the scene in terms of whether it was kind of the script or just conjuring up the emotions? And if so, how did you coach them through that? Because obviously there's lots of very difficult, I'd imagine, scenes throughout the 4 films that you worked on. So were there any that they find particularly challenging?
Do you know the trickiest things were big action sequences that were filmed across consecutive weeks? Just the length of time it takes, and actually the hardest thing was the length of the shoots that we did. They went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, months in fact, and across all the seasons. And you do a scene in July, and then you're doing the scene that is its sister scene 4 months later, and just trying to kind of keep everybody's energy and sort of focus and concentration in the right place. That's the hardest thing, I'd say. But there were always challenging days. Emotional scenes are always the trickiest thing. You know, Dobby's death in Wales, when Dobby dies at the end of Palace Part 1, was quite challenging. But what really helps then, actually what really helps, is getting away from the studio. Getting away from the studio, because when you put actors in a green screen environment, they're already, you know, struggling to create a reality.
Because they've got to imagine it.
You've got to imagine it, exactly. And when we went to Wales to shoot Dobby's death, you're on the beach, it's freezing cold, they're soaking wet, they're on borderline hypothermic, and that tactility and that connection with the real world suddenly triggers so much more. And I think if I do one thing differently, if I went back to the start of these movies and made them again, the one thing I would do differently would be where we could, I'd say, let's get out away from the green screens. Let's get out into the real world, and let's connect with it, because it really helps. Even though Stuart Craig's sets are absolutely beautiful, and you see many of them here.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to ask, just briefly. Did you ever see, be honest, did you ever see another bit of Stuart genius and just think, I can't do that justice on screen? It's going to be on screen for 20 seconds. And, you know, I can't light it well enough, I can't, you know, exploit it well enough, and it's like, you know, a brilliant bit of architecture.
Every day you would see things. I mean, just in the way that Stephanie McMillan would dress a set. It would sometimes inspire where you put the camera. You know, you'd bring the camera so you'd have a wonderful piece of foreground that was delightful. And because Stuart and Stephanie would give you so many wonderful options and delightful angles to shoot from. So it was a veritable treasure trove of stuff, because he's so clever, and we had the resources as well. We had so one always tried to do justice to what Stuart was bringing, but ultimately it's always about the story. And that's where I would always follow my instincts.
Daniel Rupert and Emma cried when the film was completed, allegedly.
Yes.
How did you feel?
Very emotional.
I was asking if you cried.
No, I didn't cry. I was too knackered. I was absolutely exhausted at the end, and but I felt very emotional. And also, they ended, but I didn't quite, because when you finish shooting, aside from a bit of ADR that they have to do, I then go into this post-production phase, which is almost more intense than shooting, because you have to edit, you have to make certain choices, you have to get the music, you have to finalize the visual effects, you have to dub it, mix it. It's like you make a movie 3 times. The script processes are very, you know, you're changing that all the time. Then shooting, you make choices every day about what you shoot, and then finally you get one last go to make it what it can be in the post process. So I was too tired, and I hadn't quite finished to feel emotional. And but also for them, they'd been on this journey from when they were this big. And can you imagine what that felt like? It was like saying, that's your childhood.
Yeah. See ya.
The exit's that way. Thank you so much. Yeah. We love you very much. But you're done now. Out into the world and make your way, because it's over. And you can't imagine what that does to a kid. who's lived their life in this environment. So it was very emotional and really moving. But they're doing all right actually now, I'd say. Rupert looks perfectly healthy, and I speak with Emma every few weeks, and she seems to be enjoying her life post-Potter. And Dan's doing amazingly well because he's got such ambition and courage, to take on things which stretch him and challenge him, and he's got great instincts and taste. So I think they'll be all right actually.
Do you think it makes a difference with this series? Because usually, what can sometimes happen with films that have lots of sequels is because there's no end goal in mind. Sometimes the sequels just turn into another money spinner. Whereas this one, there's a very, very definite story arc.
Yeah.
So do you think that helped to kind of keep the energy up right till the very end?
Totally, and I think the fact that the stories got darker and a bit more complicated probably helped. And I think that each book that came out always offered something interesting and new for different actors in the series. And I think the unique feature of the series is that you're seeing these actors grow in front of you. That's what I loved about it, was the fact that you were following these characters and these actors and they were growing old in front of you. So as you were getting older, they were getting older. And I can't think of a single other film series that has quite done that, other than Michael Apted's brilliant 7 Up, which is a documentary series. There's something really magical about that in itself. And that's why the end at King's Cross, when they've grown up and they've got their own kids, is, for me, so moving. It's the sort of cycle of life. It's a beautiful thing.
Do you have a favourite film out of the Harry Potter series?
I loved Alfonso's film. I thought that was absolutely terrific. I love Alfonso as a filmmaker. I think he's very special and gifted. But then I made Deathly Hallows Part 2, and that's my favourite. And I can say that because I'm always hammering my own work and all being. But I really enjoyed Hallows Part 2. I thought it was just nice finishing the series, and I just like having a big final fight with Voldemort and Harry. Sort of concluding the thing, and sort of bringing it to the end. So I'm proud of that film. But I think Alfonso's brilliant.
Pressure's on.
Good. We're good, guys.
Alfonso's got a new film coming out, Gravity.
Yes.
Are you quite looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table?
I always love what he brings to the table. He's always, that would be great. And David was talking about it. It sounds fascinating.
Because he's involved with it, I think, David.
Yeah, David's produced it.
Yeah.
And David was telling me that Alfonso's got this incredibly long take in it that lasts for so many minutes. It's really fun. I love the sort of technical ambition of Alfonso's work. But he also has great spirit as well. So, no, it's always impressive. Brilliant.